As they do every 4 years at this time, political appointees begin to depart. In their absence, contractors should prepare for a slowdown in new and innovative project starts. At least that's the view of longtime federal and marketing and sales consultant Larry Allen, who joins me now. And this phenomenon is real, isn't it? The end of term. Even if the same guy could get elected, the politicals start to leave in general now, don't they?
That's right, Tom. They really do. And it's inevitable. It really doesn't depend on who's in the White House. Like clockwork, this time of a 4-year presidential term, whether it's the first or second term, you see appointees starting to leave, either to go back to the private sector. Some may join the campaign and try to reshuffle the deck. If their candidate gets reelected, they can come back in, perhaps in a different spot. But in the meantime, while you certainly have very competent career managers in government agencies, inevitably the pace of change, particularly for innovative projects, drops at least one gear. And we're starting to see that a little bit right now. It's not that the meat and potatoes of government work won't get done. That still gets done right now, and thankfully will get done through the end of the fiscal year. But if you're trying to do anything that is closely tied to an administration priority, and then all of a sudden the top one or two people in that agency appointed by the administration leave, well, that could create a question mark.
A lot of agencies, I think, are still evaluating the possibility of TMF funds, of Technology Modernization Fund dollars. And that takes some high-level sponsorship in general, doesn't it?
It does. And you've seen a lot of scrutiny paid to the TMF. And I'm a big supporter of that fund, by the way, Tom. I think that it's something that, used correctly, gives government the ability to break out of its "this is how we've always done it" mode and get into something new. But it does take that top level leadership. It also takes increasingly accountability at the top level for how those funds are spent and the ability to repay at least part of them back to the fund. We know that that's been a major area of congressional oversight of the TMF over the last couple of years. And so if you don't have that, then I think the people who make those decisions on how TMF dollars are allocated will notice that.
And given the fact that appropriations for 2024 didn't get to agencies until halfway through the fiscal year in the first place, maybe the whole slowdown issue is a little compounded. You have the slowing down because of the end of the administration, and you also have the slowness to ramp up because of the lateness of the funds. What's the best course for contractors to keep some action going here?
Tom, I think that's a great question. And if I were advising companies, I would say, while you don't want to totally dismiss those innovative programs that people have been talking about, you might want to take a little more of a cautious approach to some of them, particularly if you know that the leadership in those agencies has been leaving. But there still is money to be spent, as you pointed out. So if it's not going to be spent on those innovative things, it's going to be spent anyway on state of the market, keep everything going, maybe update the programs we already have in place, those sort of expenditures. And if you're a contractor, you should recalibrate your approach to business accordingly.
We're speaking with Larry Allen, president of Allen Federal Business Partners. You're also writing this week that the Small Business Innovation Research, SBIR, acquisitions are accelerating, and they've been growing fast in the last couple of years. Review quickly what they are and what types of contractors ought to maybe get in on that action.
Well, Tom, what we're talking about here is the Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR, SBIR in the parlance, because everybody's got to have an acronym in government acquisition. And looking at Federal Procurement Data System spend information, SBIR contracts have gone up 31% over the last 4 years. That's a substantial increase. And what these are, they're really intended to be prototype development sort of programs, similar in some ways to other transaction authority, although with their own special rules and regulations. It's not supposed to be things that are in current commercial production until you at least get to phase 3 of the SBIR. There are 3 phases. And, the first phase is to prove the technology. The second would be the prototyping, and the third would be fuller on-time online production before you transition to a regular commercial item acquisition strategy. In terms of the businesses, even though SBIR, small business, is right there in the name, I really think that the SBIR program is starting to get interest from contractors of all sizes. While large business can't really prime a small business contract by definition, that doesn't mean that large businesses haven't taken note of growth in the SBIR arena. It's simply becoming another way to conduct non-traditional acquisitions, to try to get around some of the red tape and an increasing amount of red tape that governs a lot of government buys these days. So for that reason, it's gaining a lot of popularity. And so if you're a large business, I think you ought to talk to some small business teammates about this as one of the arrows in your acquisition quiver.
Yes, if you look at SBIR and OTA, as you mentioned earlier, it seems like water is seeking its own level and trying to get some kind of efficient way to get these types of contracts done that is extra far, you might say.
I think that's a really good way to look at it, Tom. And the idea that you've got all these workarounds, it's like heart bypass surgery. The regular arteries are clogged, but the heart still needs to keep beating. It's the same thing here. You've got a government acquisition system where the traditional lanes are maybe a little jammed up, so people keep looking for ways around, and SBIR is definitely one of those conduits.
And then there is the issue in the far world of increasing demand for data by federal agencies about acquisition, about contractors, about contractor activity, and it's getting burdensome.
It really is. The demand for data in government acquisition is insatiable, and I think there are some clear benefits to the government for data-driven acquisition decisions. However, increasingly, it's industry that is being asked or required to come up with the data and to provide it in a way that's usable to government agencies. That just increases contractor overhead. And what I'm saying here is that it's time for contractors to have an honest discussion with their government counterparts on their need for data, their desire for it, but the fact that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And if the government wants all this information, then contractors are going to have to be compensated to pay for it, because, as I said, it's not like government traditionally turns to contracting officers and says, gather this data. Or if they do, then the contracting officers in turn go to industry and say, gather this data. So it really drives up acquisition overhead and record-keeping burdens for contractors. And if that's something that the government wants, okay, but we have to have a discussion about who's going to pay for it.
Larry Allen is president of Allen Federal Business Partners. As always, thanks so much.
Tom, thank you, and I wish your listeners happy selling.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts. And this program note, be sure to sign up for Federal News Network's Customer Experience Exchange starting today at 1. The online event will feature an array of federal CX success stories. Today's speakers include Social Security Commissioner Martin O'Malley and the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency's Mark Peckrell. The CX Exchange, today at 1. Sign up at federalnewsnetwork.com.